Okay, welcome viewers. Welcome to the stream. It is Sunday, and that means we're going to dig around at sources. Uh, yeah, we are doing genealogy, and I am using a family tree of mine to help all of you understand techniques that you can use to build out your family histories. And for those of you joining in the chat, yay, welcome. The idea behind this stream is that we would like this to be interactive. So, as you're watching and joining the chat, let us know what you're interested in seeing. Let me know if you have questions about your family, stuff that we want to look up while we're on the stream. Today we had a viewer question that revolved around trying to solve problems with DNA matches. And there are lots of DNA services out there. They all work a little bit differently. I've actually tried a number of them. So I have for myself Ancestry DNA. I have 23andMe. My family members have done both Ancestry and 23andMe. And we use the GEDmatch matching service where any place that does your DNA, you can download the results. They all allow you to download your results. You can upload those to GEDmatch and use those to find matches kind of across people who've used different providers. And so there's a lot of, and then, oh, and I've used Family Tree DNA, which is the place, that's the one that I know of that has the most features for doing your male line Y DNA. I am pretty far from a DNA expert. It's one of those things I keep meaning to study up on and learn how it works better, and I keep not doing that. But there are specific things that I've been able to do with DNA matches that I wanted to kind of talk through with you because one of our awesome viewers has a question about his family that's really remarkably similar to the question that we've already explored a bit on stream about my Hammond family. So the tree that you're seeing on the screen, I actually, the first time, banner moment, first time I've actually done prep for the stream beforehand instead of just showing up and making stuff up. So I'm pretty pleased with myself. And this is a separate tree that I've created that I'm trying to use it to illustrate first the problem, and then we'll talk about how I've used DNA to help solve the problem. So if you've watched previous episodes of the stream, and I hope you have, if you haven't, they're available on demand on Twitch, go check them out. You will know that we started out with my grandfather, Harry Hammond, and we've been working our way back. He died in the 1970s, and we've been working our way back through his family history because when I started this journey, we didn't know anything about who his, even who his immediate ancestors were, much less what his complete lineage was. We knew a lot more about my grandmother, his wife, my paternal grandmother. We knew a lot more about her. We did not know a whole lot about him. And so I was able to research over many years and expand that tree a whole bunch. And it's a great demonstration project for a lot of the different techniques that you can use. So we started with Harry Hammond, and we worked our way through using US Census records. We were able to find Harry, determine that his parents were Eugene and Ella, and determine that Eugene's parents were Honeywell and Emily. And Honeywell being a really interesting Hammond name, on one of the previous streams, we did some research just trying to figure out where on earth did the name Honeywell Hammond come from. And we ascertained that there were at least 3, maybe 4 distinct people who had the name Honeywell Hammond, and they all fell in the same branch of the same family. And so we thought that's a pretty good clue that our Honeywell Hammond is part of that family. But as much as we wanted, because of Honeywell's age and where he came from, we ran out of resources to figure out who his parents were pretty quickly, because he hit with Eugene and Ella, we were able to place them in a household with Honeywell and Emily because they are listed in a U.S. Census together after 1850. 1850 is when we started enumerating free persons by the name of each individual person in the household rather than just under the head of household's name. Before that, 1840 and previously, All the free persons were enumerated by account and gender and age, but not by name. So we're not going to find Honeywell Hammond as a child in his parents' household by name. He might be a tick mark somewhere on that census, but we won't know that that's him unless we have other surrounding data. So our ability to trace back using the census ran out on us, is the point. The viewer who submitted his problem to me has his, we call that a brick wall ancestor. We get back as far as we can and we run into a brick wall. His brick wall ancestor is, funnily enough, the same age, and even was reported his birth in about the same place. So he was born, his ancestor was born in the 1810 time frame in Vermont. My Honeywell was born about 1807 in Vermont. And Vermont was also a challenge because Vermont has pretty sketchy vital records. If you can make your way back to some place like Massachusetts, where, or to some of the communities in Pennsylvania where church records were kept really well, those places you can get into, you can kind of seamlessly bridge that gap of the, from that 1840 census. If you find church records, you're kind of good to go and you can keep building out your tree. The other thing that we found was that you can find family books. And funnily enough, just like with my Hammonds, in our stream, we found that there are 2 different Hammond genealogy books, and my Honeywell is not in either one of those books. But it is how we figured out that there were other people named Honeywell, because they are in the books, and we looked at them and said, well, their details don't match my guy. So that's not my guy, but surely my guy is in there somewhere. So I drew this up. Sorry, I've been talking to this static screen here, but I drew this up to kind of illustrate where we found ourselves at that point of the problem, because that's basically where our viewer is in his journey now, is that he's also found a family book that's based on that surname, and he's found some people, some families in that book. His brick wall relative is not listed in the book, but there are some families in that, family groupings in that book that are kind of interesting candidates, but we really just don't know enough to know how to place our ancestor in that family. And so to illustrate what we know at this point, now viewers will know that we used other records to fill this out, and we now know how Honeywell Hammond is linked to Benjamin Hammond and Elizabeth Honeywell. But when we started, there was a point in the research where I sat at this place in the research for many years before I found those other records, because some of the records that we found were things like guardianships and probates and land records that required a fair amount of digging to find. They weren't friendly leafy hints that came up on Ancestry that we got for free. We had to do some digging to find those. When you have to do the digging, it helps to know who you need to do the digging for. Because, and here's the problem. So what we have is that we have Honeywell Hammond born in 1807. And then we have, if I click on this, you can see a little more detail here. The Benjamin Hammond who married Elizabeth Honeywell. We are pretty sure that our Honeywell is a descendant from that line because of that family name, right? We now know that the given name Honeywell is given in tribute to this Elizabeth Honeywell and her father, I think it was Richard, and son of Roger. And so we're making the guess that this Honeywell Hammond was descended somehow from a family that directly goes back to this Benjamin and Elizabeth. It is theoretically possible that it could be on a sibling line and he could be named after a great aunt. But for this many generations removed, that seems less likely to me. It is possible that they might name after an immediate aunt if he was in, that immediate generation. But for the name to carry through 3 or 4 generations, that seems like it's likely to be direct descent named after a grandmother. And indeed, that's what we found. So we are going to choose to look at this branch of the tree to figure out, well, how's he connected? You will notice that I have some mystery Hammonds in here. One thing that we know is we can pretty safely assume that this is a male line descent because he keeps the Hammond name, right? So it's not any one of Benjamin Hammond's daughters, because if they had descendants, it was with a spouse that had a different surname. And in fact, we know that there was a Honeywell Haskell who was one of the daughters in that line gave the name Honeywell in tribute, but she didn't have the Hammond surname anymore. So we know that this is going to be a male line descent using the surname Hammond. There are some edge cases where maybe a daughter had an illegitimate child and gave the child her surname. I've seen that in other communities. So rare that it's not something I'm going to really lose sleep over or worry about. So we know that this is male line Hammonds. We know that this is a son of Benjamin and a son of that son. How do I know that it's 3 generations apart? I don't really. Uh, it might not be. It could be as many as 4. It could maybe be 2. It's wild guesses based on the years of birth, right? So we assume that this guy probably married in his mid-20s. So a good rule of thumb to use in these communities, and this is, it varies by community. Some communities, people married much younger, but in the New England and North communities, they tended to marry in their mid 20s. So we can use that as a rule of thumb and say, okay, so he probably married around 1700. And then his children probably married in their mid 20s. The trick is we don't know where in the birth order this falls, right? Because Benjamin could then go on to be having children, and heaven help us if he had more than one wife, right? He may, if it wouldn't be a later wife than Elizabeth Honeywell, because then my guy wouldn't be named after her. But if he had earlier wives, Elizabeth could be, he might have married Elizabeth when he was much older and be having children all the way up into his old age. That was a thing that happened. So we don't know where it falls in the birth order. That birth order could span for a single spouse, could be about 20 years of span, which makes a big difference. And then if there's other spouses, it could be another 20 years, depending on how old the spouse was. So we don't know that for sure. But we're going to say married about 1700. Let's pretend that it's the oldest son of the oldest son of the oldest son. It's probably not, honestly, but let's pretend it is. So let's see. He's married about 1700. Let's say he has his first child about 1700, because that makes the math a lot easier. Then this child here is born about 1700, marries and has his first child in 1725, and this one marries and has his first child in 1750. And that's a little, so you can see where a whole other generation could fit in there, right? Could they have, could he, so also my math is terrible, but so we could fit at 3, 4, maybe not 2, maybe 2 is too far. But we could fit a lot of generations in there to say how far down is Honeywell going to be. Here's the other problem, and I will flip the view on this tree to show you what our challenge is if all we know is to look at the sons of Benjamin Hammond and their male descendants, is this. So far, so good, but when we look at the tree of all of the male line descendants of Benjamin Hammond, and let's go view his tree and see what that shows us. We got kind of a lot of them. If I zoom out, that's a lot. You can see this little map down here is showing us that that's a lot. And then look at all of these ones with little arrows, means that they have descendants, male descendants. And so when I went through and did the calculations, we ended up with about 50, just of those named in the Hammond book. There were about 50 descendants of Benjamin Hammond who could be in the line of ancestry for Honeywell. And so we have this Benjamin, it turns out, had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sons, all of whom had sons, and some of them had a lot of sons. And almost all of them had sons who Roger didn't. Roger's 2 sons did not themselves have any children. They died young without leaving any heirs, so the book tells us. And so I went through and just built this out to say, how many possible Hammond ancestors are there? And in doing that, we do notice an interesting thing, which is you would think that any of the sons of Benjamin and Elizabeth, let's zoom us back in, could choose to name their children Honeywell in tribute to Elizabeth. But none of the immediate sons, except one actually did that. So we looked through the male descent from Polypus. Look at these killer names, by the way. And Barzillai, and Israel, and Josephus, and Elisha, and Roger. And the only one of them who named a son Honeywell was this guy, Antipas. That name may sound familiar because if you've been watching the stream, you're going to know that that's who we found. But so we look down here on Antipas, and Antipas has a son, Honeywell, which is immediately super tantalizing. But the Hammond book tells us that that Honeywell died without leaving any heirs. No children. Didn't have any children. So that was disappointing and ruled him out kind of right away. And you'll also maybe recall that when we found, let's see, the son Joseph, Jira died young, no heirs. Benjamin had some children, no Honeywells. And Joseph had some children and also did not have any Honeywells. And that, as far as the book goes, that's as far as things went, right? We didn't know anything about the family of Antipas or Stephen here, that Antipas II. We did know that there was a Benjamin there who married, and he had a Honeywell, and this Honeywell is named in the book as someone who went to Ohio, and traces of him were lost. And if we look across, oh, we don't have it across because we can't see them both. If we were to look across, we would see that this guy here, the one who went to Ohio, is in the same generation as mine. My guy went to Iowa. Started in Vermont, went to Pennsylvania, ended up in Ohio. Ended up in Iowa. Hey, Ohio's kind of on the way to Iowa. So you kind of have to go through it to get there. So was it possible that at a point in time, my guy here, could this be my guy? Well, yes, it could, right? That's a possibility. We also had the possibility, I suppose I didn't plug that in on the tree. There, so here's my guy. Wait, no, my guy's down here. Here's my guy. We also had this tantalizing possibility that he might have had a brother named Lewis, who might have been born about 1805 in Vermont. Right? So at this point, as I'm sifting through all of these possibilities, we've got candidate son of, so another one on the Antipas line, who would be the son of Joseph, nephew Joseph. Here, so we've got this Honeywell. Could that be my guy? So we're looking at a couple of things. We want to look at whether the dates match up, right? We're seeing that the generations match up. The book did not give us any dates for these people. Same thing with Antipas and Stephen here. The book did not know the birth dates or any other dates for these people. So we don't actually know whether this Honeywell is the right age to be mine. We just know that he's in a generation where that's possible. And we also don't know if his father was alive and having children at the right time. We don't know when his children were born. We're trying to fit him into a family. We don't know if my Honeywell would fit. The other piece that we're going to look at to try to narrow it down is geographic location. Right? So I just told the story of how Ohio is not quite Iowa, but you could maybe tell a story where maybe it was in Ohio for a period of time. Maybe that matches up, but it is a little sketch, right? The book said that this Joseph Hammond, who was originally born in Massachusetts, migrated to New York. And at that point in our research, we only kind of sort of had any connection to New York, other than that it's on the way from Vermont to Pennsylvania, which is a journey that we know my Honeywell made. So still, all of that is still looking pretty sketchy. Something that we were able to do on the other lines, now that dive down into where the Honeywells are was a pretty quick decision. You do want to go through and look at all those other lines that are descended from Benjamin. Let's go back and look at how big they are. And I forget which one of them. I think it's Elisha. One of these family lines actually relocated to the south, went to university in New Jersey, and then took a university position in South Carolina. And then that whole Hammond branch ended up being prominent people in South Carolina. We can probably rule that out as an origin for my guy who was in Vermont. No association there, right? Several of these other family lines remained in Massachusetts. Could some of their children have migrated to Vermont? Absolutely. But it's definitely going to be more interesting if I find anybody on these branches who's associated with Vermont. Spoiler alert, in the book itself, we don't find that. Even on the Antipas line, we don't find that Antipas went to Vermont, even though Joseph actually didn't go to New York. The book was wrong. Joseph went to Vermont. And Antipas, his son, started out in Vermont and went to New York. And that was where we ended up finding records. But the book sort of directed us in not quite the right direction. We found that trail eventually through land records by looking at these people. So get back where the problem that we were trying to solve. We are still trying to figure out where my guy, there we go, Honeywell, is from. And one of the clues that we had as we are trying to kind of work our way down, but also work our way up to figure out how does he link into that, we really think he probably links into that Hammond tree, but how? And this is where I can start to talk about, because I actually, the way this all played out, this is how I did it, is that we found Lewis Hammond. We saw that the two of them had a close relationship because they migrated together. They were born about the same time, both in Vermont, and they both ended up in Iowa in a very remote area with only they were them being the only two Hammond families in that area. And so we wondered, could that be siblings, maybe first cousins, who migrated together? When we looked for Lewis, you will recall that we found that his birth record actually existed in Vermont. And it showed that he was the son of an Antipas and a mother, Beulah Blodgett. Antipas Hammond. So we're going to put some question marks in here. So we've got an Antipas Hammond, and then we're going to add in here. Originally, Lewis's birth record said his mother's name was Beulah Hammond, and then we found the marriage record for Antipas and Beulah that told us that Beulah's last name was Blodgett. So we're going to go ahead and add Beulah Blodgett in here. Beulah Blodgett, question mark. And so there she is. So this is where we can start to do, I said at the very, very beginning of the stream that I was going to make this be about DNA, and I hadn't yet, but I was setting the stage for here's how we want to try to use DNA to solve this problem. Let's talk about some very basics about how the DNA test that I'm going to be describing is the one that's offered at Ancestry and also the one that's offered at 23andMe. It is called Autosomal DNA, and what it does is it's a broad look across all of your chromosomes. You will hear about Y DNA, which is zeroed in on the male line. And so one question would be, we're actually trying to go up the male line, and that is my surname, and I have a brother whose surname is Hammond, who is a male line descendant of this whole line. So if we look at his Y DNA, that will tell us pretty conclusively whether or not we match the male line descendants of Benjamin and Elizabeth, because the way Y DNA works, zoom that out even more, is that every single blue dot on this entire screen and all the ones that are dropped down that we can't see right now, all of the blue people on there should share identical Y DNA, because the Y chromosome is passed intact from father to son. It doesn't change. And mutations happen, but they're pretty rare, and they would be pretty small. So you see very little difference across a few hundred years in Y DNA. All of these Hammonds are going to share the exact same Y DNA, which means my brother and my father, who are both living and could do a Y DNA test, would be able to tell us whether they share the same Y DNA with all of these people. And that you can use, you'll see on Family Tree DNA, that's who sells a good Y DNA test. A lot of families and surname research projects are doing Y DNA to try to kind of get the surnames into various family groups to figure out this common ancestor is this branch of the tree. This other one with a different Y chromosome is this other branch, and you can kind of group everybody together. So that's a thing we could do, and that would be useful. The challenge that we have with Y-DNA is that because it doesn't change, every single one of these dudes in this row here, however many those are, they all had the exact same Y chromosome as each other, pretty much. Which means that knowing that we match one of them doesn't tell me anything about which one of them I'm descended from. And that's the problem I'm trying to solve right now. If we match Y DNA, it will confirm a thing that we suspected, which is it can confirm for us, yes, we are descended from that Benjamin Hammond Elizabeth Honeywell family grouping. But I kind of already knew that, right? Now, I suspect it. I have pretty decent evidence that it's true. I would love to have that confirmed. I could check that off of my list. That would be great. So that's a valuable thing to do. But it doesn't actually tell me anything about, let's look at this. Yeah, let's look here. It doesn't really tell me anything about Honeywell that I didn't know before, because it's going to tell me that I belong to the Benjamin Hammond family group and that we could be descended from any one of his sons and any of their sons, according to research we've already done. It doesn't tell me anything new. It just confirms a thing I already suspected. And it doesn't tell me who's this guy, and how does this guy connect, and how does this guy connect. Doesn't answer that question. So Y-DNA doesn't help with that. And zeroing in on surnames doesn't help with that, because I already know the Hammond surname. If I go looking at, am I related to lots of people with the surname Hammond? Again, DNA is not going to tell me anything I didn't already know. I already know I'm cousins with lots of people named Hammond. I'm a Hammond. This is not complicated. So, introduce now the concept of autosomal DNA, because we can do a little bit more because it is broader. It looks out across more of the chromosomes. What they specifically do is that they pick areas of chromosomes where we know that humans differ from each other within families, right? 99 point a long number of nines percent of our DNA is the same as every single other human on the planet, because it's all the little instructions that make us into a human. So the parts that differ are only those tiny bits that cause us to look and cause our bodies to behave any differently from any other human. And those are the ones that are inherited in families. So they're looking at small pictures of different pieces of chromosomes that we know to be associated with family heritage. In any case, the point is that it's broad, it looks across all things, and it becomes something that's useful to me as a female person who does not have a Y chromosome. It becomes useful to me because I can now match my DNA in interesting ways. And in addition to not having the Y chromosome that my brother has, I also don't have exactly the same mix of autosomal DNA that he has. So, what is the basics to be aware of course, is we inherit half of our DNA from each parent. That means here, Honeywell, for example, he has half of his DNA, including the Y chromosome, which is a good chunk, but the rest of it is half. Half of it comes from Antipas Hammond, the other, or from his Hammond ancestor. The other comes from his mother, who may or may not be Beulah Blodgett. So he has half of his DNA from his mother. And then he, of course, passes on. When we turn that around and look at it from the parent's point of view, because we all have the same amount of DNA, right? We all have the 23 chromosomes. We have 46. We get 23 from each parent. What that means, the fact that we get half from each parent also means that each parent gives us half of their DNA. So Beulah Blodgett doesn't pass down her entire genome to her children like Lewis. She passes half of it to Lewis, and the other half of Lewis's genome comes from his father, in this case Antipas. So half of her DNA just didn't get handed down. But for each of her children, they get a slightly different mix of which half and which half. It's not cleanly that they all get exactly the same DNA, unless they're identical twins, and that's what would make them identical, so they have exactly the same DNA from both parents. But for siblings, and this is why you look similar to your sibling but not exactly the same, is that that mix of exactly what gets handed down is slightly different, which means that the Y chromosome is a fine example, but there's others across all the other chromosomes. I don't have exactly the same DNA that my brother has, and what that means is that he may match people that I don't match, like men with Y chromosomes. In any case, something that we now understand because of the way all that works is that yes, we could learn some things about our descent from looking at Hammond DNA, but to really understand where in the tree Honeywell belongs, we can now begin to look at information that we don't already know. Specifically, we know that Honeywell must be descended from a Hammond, but it's not at all a given that he's descended from a Blodgett. And I happen to know in the rest of my tree there aren't any other Blodgetts anywhere. So now that doesn't mean that there might not be some, especially if I'm up in New England where families intermarried a lot. There could be some Blodgett DNA that I don't know about. But at the moment, let's assume I don't have any Blodgett DNA in my tree at all. Or rather, I don't have any Blodgett names or people in my tree at all, which means I don't have any reason to think that I would share any DNA with any Blodgetts. But what if I do? And now I can start investigating and fishing around a little bit. The specific tools for how to do that differ for every DNA site. Ancestry gives us shared ancestor matches, where they are using a combination of you share DNA with, I should back up a little bit. When we talk about matching autosomal DNA, we don't have Beulah Blodgett's actual DNA. We don't have her genome, right? She did not spit into a vial and mail it to Ancestry. She died in the 1800s. We're not digging up Beulah Blodgett and testing her DNA from her, her body at rest. That is not currently a thing that people do. So we don't have Honeywell's DNA, we don't have Antipas's DNA, but what we have is the remnants of their DNA that were passed along to their descendants. Which means when we talk about finding DNA matches, what we are actually doing is that we are testing, of course, the whole range of living people who are interested in researching their families. And so all of these living people are submitting their DNA, and the various services offer various ways of them also saying, so here is my genome, and here's what I know about my family tree. So I've done that on a couple of different services. So when we say we're looking for matches, what I am specifically looking for is there will be living cousins today that I share DNA with who are not descended from family members that I know about, right? We look at their tree and my tree, and we don't see any connection between the two. We don't see any place where they have the same ancestors that I have, as far as we know. And when I'm looking for how do I connect into a DNA cousin's family tree, what we know is because of the DNA match, we know we have a shared ancestor somewhere. We just don't know who it is. And so what I am hoping to find when I say I am looking for a Blodgett match is I may not find Beulah Blodgett in their tree. I don't know that. If they were descended directly from Beulah Blodgett, well, she married a Hammond. She's a Hammond. They'd probably be Hammond cousins. And maybe that tells me something I don't already know, but maybe it tells me things I already know, right? So my aunt on my father's side, who is part of this tree, she took an Ancestry DNA test. And so Ancestry helpfully tells me every single Hammond thing that I open up that I have a DNA match on that line. And I go look and it's my aunt. I'm like, thanks. I already totally knew that. Like, duh, right? Because she has the DNA she inherited from her father. He's my grandfather. I have some of the DNA that I inherited from my grandfather, right? Who he passed to his son, who passed to me. So we share, my aunt and I share a whole bunch of DNA. And because we are so closely related, what we both know is that we both our common ancestor is my grandfather, Harry Hammond, who's her father. That's our common ancestor. Everything above that, for me and her, doesn't tell me anything I didn't already know. Because if I find that she is descended from these Hammonds, I'm descended from the same Hammonds, right? It's not new information. But if I were to find that we shared a bunch of DNA with, let us say, descendants of Lewis, it turns out I don't think we found that Lewis had any children. So I explored that angle, right? Can we say that we share a bunch of DNA with descendants of Lewis? That would at least confirm that these two are related, though it might not tell me enough to know how closely they're related. There's some stuff you can do with how big the segments are on the chromosome and how strong of a match it is that I actually don't know how to do, and there are much better DNA folks than me who are good at doing that. That might actually be able to tell us if we're in sort of the right generation. I don't typically do that. I'm usually able to get far enough without needing to do it. So what I would be in this case looking for that would really help narrow it down is if I find that there exist DNA cousins out in the world who are descended from, let's do this, who are descended from Beulah Blodgett and her, forget who her father is. Don't remember what her father's name is. So we have an unknown Blodgett. This guy. And we also don't right now know who her mother is. But let's say that she has relative, brother. She has a brother. It happens to be the case that because there's a Blodgett family book, right? So there happens to be she has a brother named Luther. Actually, we can just make this even simpler. We don't even have to know who her brother is, right? Let's just say that there's a Blodgett brother who has male line Blodgett descendants. There he is. He's over here, right? If her brother, unknown Blodgett, has a bunch of Blodgett descendants who come down to present day and have left living descendants who are now living and gave DNA, we would find that they have male line Blodgett in their tree. And if we could find that that connects up to the family that belongs to Beulah, that would be a pretty strong indication that we are not just looking at, hey, we have DNA from Hammond, but we have DNA from potentially this couple. It does cause us to need to go look, could there be other Blodgetts who married other Hammonds? And that's especially true if you had allied families who stayed together in small towns and intermarried a lot, right? What if Antipas had a brother who also married a Blodgett, or a sister who married a Blodgett? And those would then share some DNA because that would actually be Hammond's DNA that they share because they married, right? So we want to look at those possibilities, but it does kind of narrow things down a little bit more for us and give us a place to actually look to see if we match. And so we can go look at, if we go look at the Blodgett family book, Blodgett Descendants of Cambridge, Blodgett Descendants of Thomas of Cambridge, Volume 1. It is on a lot of free services, including Family Search. And it's free. I have to sign in, but it's free. I think this is the password. I always forget the password. Might have to go copy the password. Yep, okay, fine. Fine, we'll go copy the password. Oh, no, it's because I'm an idiot. Okay. I do kind of the same idiot thing every time, which is I forget that my username is not my email. Fine. Okay, now we're signed in. Now we can look at the book. We can go look for Beulah. We can search in the book for Beulah. And remember that we found her. We've actually looked in this book on a previous stream. We found, oh, it's going to be annoying. We found her. Nope. Dang it. Nope. Okay. Search is not our friend this time. We did find her in this book, though. Why don't we go look at, maybe we linked that page because we knew we wanted to come back to it, like I tell us that we should. Okay. here. Let's go find Beulah. Over here. Yep. Okay. Yes. Yes. We found her, and we found that she was descended from Benjamin and Rebecca. So that becomes this other thing that we can do. Okay, yes, here's the Blodgett book. Good. Found the Blodgett book. So what we now know is that Beulah, we're going to keep these question marks on these people because it's still possible that I'm wrong, of course, right? That happens. It's possible that I'm wrong and that Benjamin and, what did I say it was? Rebecca? Yes, Benjamin and Rebecca might be the wrong people, right? So we've got Rebecca Haynes, question mark. Now, I know from my other research that I'm not wrong and that these people are the right people. And then Benjamin and Rebecca had Benjamin, Rebecca, Dorcas, Martha, another Martha, Mary, Susanna, and then Beulah. She's the youngest. So that is a bunch of potential, if any of these folks had left descendants, including because we're dealing now with autosomal DNA, right? We're not limited to Y DNA. We are dealing with autosomal DNA. If any of them, sons or daughters, left descendants of any surname, right? Surname could be a daughter of a daughter of a daughter of a daughter. It's changed a bunch of times over their lives, right? Over the generations. Those could still be left descendants who would be my DNA cousins and who would trace their descent up to Blodgett. So I don't actually care what the DNA cousin's surname is. That's a misdirection. Because if they are descended on a daughter's line from anywhere, we could find, they're going to have lots of surnames in their tree. And what I want is to find, do they have the Blodgett surname in their tree? So a simple thing you can do with Ancestry DNA matches is search for surnames, and it will tend to offer you up if they can't figure out how you're connected, but that you have similar surnames in the tree, they'll give them to you. I get a lot of, hey, you both have Smith in your tree. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Thanks, that's super helpful. But in the case of something like Blodgett, which is not as common a name, if I see that I have matches that have Blodgett in their tree, that's going to point me to, hey, this happens to be a Hammond who happens to have married a Blodgett. That's a good place to look. If there are other Hammonds who also married Blodgetts, I want to go look at them too, because Lewis could be a descendant of that. He could even be, if he were something called a double cousin, which is when siblings married siblings and had children, those children have DNA that looks like sibling DNA, or looks more like sibling DNA. And that's why some of that, like exactly how much DNA do you share, still leaves you with a wide range of ways you could possibly be related. So we happen to know from the book that we have a Benjamin. Oh, that's interesting. I thought she had a brother, Luther, but the book doesn't think she does. And the book may have missed somebody, or I may just be misremembering. So she has a brother, Benjamin, but she has a bunch of other siblings. And so what I would want to do is go look for, I'm not necessarily going to go hog wild adding all those siblings to my tree, although I could. The more deeply that I want to go fishing for matches, the more that I might add. So this is a point where I say, okay, I have both some records, and I have some records that point me to maybe this family is interesting. And so here's where the technique, oh, hey, it's a viewer. Hi. Oh, it's a spammer. Okay, we're gonna ban you. Hang on, I gotta figure out how to ban you. Done. I'm banning you. Ban you. Very good. Okay. Banned and yep, excellent. Okay, very good. Very good. Sorry, spam. The joys of moderating your own stream. So, what we're looking at is we had some records from Lewis that made us ask the question, what if Honeywell were Lewis's brother? Well, if Honeywell were Lewis's brother, we know that Lewis is descended from the Blodgett family. If Honeywell is his brother, then Honeywell's descendants should share DNA with Blodgett descendants. So the technique that I use is in my tree, I will add, and sometimes I have made separate trees for the purpose of doing, these are what I call, the term is used elsewhere in genealogy. Folks will call these a fishing expedition. I want to go fishing for on Ancestry. They do the best job of combining your DNA match information with everybody's family tree information. So when you do a DNA test at Ancestry.com, you can and absolutely should link your DNA results to a family tree where you tell Ancestry who you are in that tree. And that tree should be built out as much as you can with as many people as you can, because that's where Ancestry is going to use that information to make matches. I see all the time people who've done Ancestry DNA who have not linked their results to a tree. And if you're going to do that, you might as well use 23andMe, because the reason Ancestry DNA is any good is that it gives you that connection to family trees. And by far, Ancestry is the place with the most trees, right? The most people doing research. Just the amount of data is the greatest on Ancestry. And that would be the advantage of doing it there. 23andMe has different sets of advantages. But the thing is, nobody uses 23andMe to put family trees on who doesn't do DNA over there, right? It wasn't created as a family tree building site. And so they don't have near as much data. Ancestry over the years has gotten better and better at not just matching up whole trees to other whole trees and like you have this person and you have this person. They have now started to do partial matches where there's a tree here that has these people and this overlaps a little bit with this tree with these people and this tree overlaps this tree with these other people and that tree matches somebody in my tree. And they can actually sort of chain those things together now because they've done so much analysis on the data that they have. So it is more powerful than a lot of the other sites because of the strength of that family tree data, which of course comes with the usual warning, which is that this tree, this tree, this tree, and this tree, before they get to mine, may all be wrong and filled with garbage that was copied from stuff on the internet. And Ancestry doesn't know, and it's going to offer up a lot of garbage to you. However, we can look at other people's trees and get a sense of whether this was really researched or just copied. We can see whether they use sources the way that I like to use sources. So we can kind of weed that stuff out. What I treat all of that as is just breadcrumbs, right? It gives me an idea of if I can in any way whatsoever find that a DNA match has some connection to Blodgett's in their tree, that's going to tell me, hey, I'm looking in the right area. And maybe this couple is worth more of my time to go dig in and do document research on. Because remember that the problem I'm trying to solve at this point is the DNA itself is not really proof. But the problem that I'm trying to solve is there are at least 50 Hammonds, all of whose families are potential for the ancestors of my Honeywell. And that's a lot of people to go do exhaustive document research, especially when at least half of them are people we don't know very much about. We don't know where they are. That's a lot of work to have to do. What I want to do is use the DNA to point me in the right direction, save me a little bit of time, and say, fine, I'm going to zero in on 1 or 2 or 5 people that I'm going to research the heck out of, and then I'm going to see if I can find document records that give me any other proof that this is that family. So armed with that DNA research, I did in fact create a separate tree that was a fishing expedition tree. And I went ahead and put in Lewis and Honeywell as if they were brothers. We could put a question mark here to make sure, like we suspect they're related, but we don't actually know for sure. Right? So the question marks are in there to remind me when I look at the tree, because I may go away for a month and be busy and then come back and forget where I left off. They are to remind me when I come back to do the research. Don't get too excited about that person. You're not 100% sure that they're correct in this tree. We've also arrived at a moment where I talk about why I keep my trees private. Because I just complained a little bit about the culture of Ancestry and Genie and RootsWeb before that and some other places where the internet has made it really easy for people to very freely copy entire trees over to themselves and run with them. And the specific methods that are used for copying oftentimes strip out sources and notes and comments, and a lot of times a lot of that data gets kind of lost, so you don't know how we knew any of these things. You just end up with these massive lists of names. And if you go on something like RootsWeb, you will find that there are people who have built out trees with 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 names in them, because they're just taking in anything that looks like a match and dumping it in the tree. And most of that information is not well researched, right? A human did not have time to do that much research most of the time. There are good ones, but a lot of times you go and look, and it's really just some names and dates, no sources, no attribution, no idea where that data came from. Ancestry is riddled with those things. And what I realized somewhat early on is that I would like to build out a tree to test a hypothesis. We talked on the last stream about the tree building utilities at Wikitree and at Family Search. Those are shared resources. They are trying to be a single tree that represents the whole world. So when I'm researching Beulah Blodgett on Wikitree, it's not just me. I don't own that profile. It's not private to just me. It's not my playground. That is a shared profile that anybody who's interested in Beulah Blodgett could come and research, whether they're related to her or not. And if I go in and start adding children to her that are not proven, everybody gets those. And on Wikitree, for sure, the standard is you don't just go plug in hypotheses and play around and try to get data from them. And Wikitree doesn't offer enough functionality for that to be useful anyway. You can, if you are, you can do that in the comments. You can connect to people on their forums. You can talk to people offline. You don't list those people as parents on the profile unless they are reasonably proven. So that's not a playground. Family Search, similar, not really a playground. Not intended to be. Anything I put in there, regardless of whether it lets me put question marks, somebody's going to look at that and think that's real information. Most people are not going to be super picky about how many sources are listed. They're just going to copy it. And on Ancestry, who baby, it's very easy for people to click save to my tree, save to my tree, save to my tree. It only comes over with the birth and death information, sometimes a marriage record. It doesn't bring the sources. It only attributes the source to another ancestry tree. You don't get all of that useful research. So I realized if I'm putting somebody in here that I know perfectly well that that's not proven and could be wrong, that's the point. Even if I put question marks in there, I just was envisioning hundreds of people going save to tree, save to tree, save to tree, and this propagating as if it was a real tree. And the next thing you know, Ancestry is going to be offering that bogus data back to me in the form of hints, and I do not want to participate. So almost all of the trees that I run on Ancestry are private, 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 private. And what I mean by that is I've gone in, I actually need to go do that on this tree because I haven't fully done it. When you set up the tree, when you create it, it gives you the option of do you want it to be public or private. And this lovely paragraph saying why public is good and you should pick public. Don't, right? Think about what I just said. Think about whether you want it to be public or private. If it's a tree that you're pretty confident about and you're keeping it clean and the information in it is pretty confident, terrific, you can make that public. If it's something that you have a lot of different sort of guesses going on, do us a favor, keep that private until you're more confident about it, until you're more sure. Privacy settings here. It's easy to make this a private tree, but sneaky Ancestry still allows private information to come up in other users' searches. And that's intended to be a thing that it comes up in a search and you'll see private tree and it will say contact this user for more information. Fine. But it will show the name of the person and usually their birth and death dates. And the context that it comes up in the searches is going to give people the idea, and I don't want to give them any ideas. So I also come in here and check the box that says I don't want this tree to come up in searches either. Don't contact me about it. This thing is intentionally a mess. I'm using this to prove a point, right? This tree specifically, I only built this to show you the DNA relationships. I'm not going to do anything with it, right? I don't need people coming and looking, although it is my tree, and if they said, hey, how'd you find this? I'd send them to the Hammond book, right? That'd be awesome. I'd say watch this stream. So, So I've now made this tree private. Because this is my private sandbox, it is now my playground. I can do things with it. And when I say I'm fishing, I'm kind of fishing for two things. The two things that Ancestry does well. What we'll see on the stream is I'm fishing for these hints. When we put Antipas and Beulah Hammond in the other tree for Lewis, we immediately got Ancestry record hints that said, hey, there's a Vermont marriage record for an Antipas Hammond and Beulah Blodgett. Do you want that? And I was like, yeah, I want that. That's clearly the right people, right? And we talked about how the how uncommon those names are made us really confident. It was the right time frame, it was the right location, it was the right names, and that's how we opened up the fact that there's a Blodgett relationship in the first place. Great. So we fished for and got, reeled it right in, some ancestry hints. Great. The second thing that we are fishing for is DNA matches. You can connect a private tree to your DNA matches. Ancestry yells at you a little bit when you do that, but you can. I have on my personal account, and I'll probably show this on the stream. On my personal account, I actually named the tree, do not copy this tree. because it's my DNA linked tree, I do put fishing expeditions in with question marks, and I say, for the love of God, don't copy. I don't know if people pay attention to that or not. I just said, hey, look, contact me if you have questions about the people with question marks. So here we have Beulah in here with a question mark. And if we find a bunch of DNA descendants on the Blodgett line, and I'm actually going to go look on my private tree in another window, because I'm kind of curious. Because when I went and did this, that's what happened. I plugged in Beulah Blodgett as a hypothetical ancestor, and I did in fact find a whole bunch of matches that came from the Blodgett line. And I have those organized. At some point, I'll probably show those to you on the stream. So let me do a quick and dirty, scrolling down to see who we found. Nope, not you, not you, not you. But we did, I promise there were Blodgetts in here. Yeah. That line, on that line. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me go search in the surnames and matches trees. Blodgett. Include similar. Oh. Maybe? I was pretty sure we did. I actually don't find them right away. Well, that takes me to my next point. So let's say we don't find any Blodgett ancestors. What does that tell me? Well, does it tell me I'm not related to anybody with that DNA? Not necessarily, because one of the reasons I might not be is, for example, what if, this wasn't the case, but what if Beulah was Benjamin's only child? That's possible. What if none of her siblings lived to adulthood or didn't leave descendants? Or what if their children didn't leave descendants, right? We saw a few of those lines that died out on the Hammond side. So it is possible that the only living descendants that share DNA that come from Benjamin and Rebecca, it is possible that the only living descendants of that line are actually Beulah's children. Right, Beulah's descendants. So that could happen, and that makes it harder to use trees to triangulate. So let's say we don't get any exciting news off of Beulah Blodgett. Are we done? Are we dead in the water? Well, we're still going to go up the tree because we can continue to look for DNA matches on the Blodgett line. We could find cousins that are not from Beulah's siblings but are from Benjamin's siblings. Maybe he had more siblings who left to descendants. But the other thing that we can do that becomes interesting is that we can look to see if we share any DNA with the Hayneses. And we wouldn't expect to see any Haynes DNA. Again, I happen to know that we didn't have any Haynes DNA anywhere in my tree, right? I see something interesting here. Okay, so and I can go actually look at another ancestry feature. I'm still trying to figure out how to show this on the stream without there being a whole bunch of private information, right? When we show DNA matches, it's actually showing the profiles of the living cousins, and I'm pretty committed to not putting private information for living people on the stream. So I am still trying to figure out how to represent that on the stream. I have 3 living DNA cousins that are descended from other siblings of Beulah, other children of Benjamin and Rebecca. There are at least 3 living cousins. And part of the reason that we're able to find them, and this is another good tip for doing DNA research, is turns out they don't match me, they match my aunt. Remember that I said that she and I didn't inherit all exactly the same DNA. For one thing, I get half of mine from my mother that she's not related to. So I only half of my DNA even could match with what my aunt has. And we have the same amount of total DNA, right? So it means half of her DNA matches something else. And because she's in a different generation from me, her DNA will say it is less diluted, right? Because any children of an aunt, my cousins, are going to have half of their DNA from their unrelated other parent. But hers is going to be all of her DNA came from my grandparents. So all of it is a more representation, right? She's got twice as much potential to match on our mutual relatives. And if anybody matches my aunt, I know that they will match me because all of the DNA that she has is from the relative that she and I share. All of her DNA is from Harry and Eddie, my grandparents. And I am also descended from them. I might match on lots of people that she doesn't, but the reverse is not the case. She will match on only people that I match on, which is pretty cool. And because she has more of that DNA, I would say undiluted, she's going to have segments that I didn't inherit that she can use to match on our cousins because our cousins got their match on that particular segment. So getting other members of your family, even if they're in your same generation, it's going to help you. If you have your siblings do their DNA, you will get slightly different results for siblings. Your siblings will match autosomal DNA with living cousins who don't match you. But if you can get the generation up, if you can get your parents, if your grandparents are still living and you can get them to do DNA, autosomal DNA, and have that data be stored and able to be used, that is a gift that will keep on giving because the technology for evaluating the DNA continues to improve. And if you can get a DNA sample from an older relative who is living, right? Imagine if I could I can't, all of my grandparents have passed, but if I could get DNA from any one of my grandparents, that would be very, very undiluted because that DNA, all of their DNA, like matches. I didn't inherit all of it, but everything that they have is going to match on cousins who I should be related to, right? So, my aunt's DNA turned up a number of matches on the Blodgett family. Amazing, right? Super helpful. We can then go look up, if I go back to, again, I'm in a different window and I'm looking at DNA results that I'm not going to show on screen. So I'm just going to describe to you what we have there. We can also look at DNA cousin match, and it's a really good interface. So I'll probably try to take some screenshots of it so that I can fuzz out the information and then be able to show it to you. And I can fuzz out the private information. But if we look here, yep, we've got some more DNA matches. Is this on me or is this on her? This one is me. And this is, yep, So I've got, she had, what did I say, 5? And I have 3 who I share DNA, and they're different. They're not the same ones. They're not from the same siblings. That's pretty cool. And then if I go and look at Haynes, so let's say, because it turned out there's a good bit of information. I believe there's a Haynes book, right? There's a fair amount of information about Rebecca Haynes. And so this is where we get, again, that super value of being able to look up the maternal lines. Because once I've determined that I'm related to Blodgetts, any more Blodgett matches doesn't give, any more names that go to just the Blodgett family doesn't give me new information. But if I can find matches on the Haynes family, that does prove to me that this is the right set of Blodgetts. Because remember, there could have been another Hammond who married a different Blodgett. And so what I'm trying to do is zero in on which couples were mine, which ones are my relatives. And I'm going to go look at Joseph Haynes. Again, I think we're going to look at my aunt's DNA matches. Yes, indeedy. And she is really, oh, and Rebecca Haynes has a sister named Beulah. So this is awesome. So there are 5 living cousins of my aunt who are descended from different lines of siblings of Rebecca Haynes. So that also points us to, as we start to stack up more of those matches, right, on different lines of the family, if we get somebody who shares descent here, again, doesn't tell me anything I didn't already know. Because let's say that we have Benjamin Blodgett. I forget what his father's name was, but we can go find it. Let's go look for that. So Benjamin, was that Samuel? Let's find out. So Benjamin Blodgett is descended from Joseph Blodgett. Fine. So we have Joseph Blodgett here. But Joseph Blodgett, if I scroll back in this book and find Joseph, generation 4, that's not the guy. This is one of those that has the chapters by generation. So I don't know where he is. So if we go back and find Joseph Blodgett in this book, Joseph Blodgett, going to be a lot of Josephs. Point being, if I find that we're related to Joseph Blodgett, it still doesn't tell me if I'm specifically from son Benjamin or from maybe some other sibling. But if I'm sharing Blodgett DNA and Haynes DNA, and by the way, who is Rebecca Haynes's mother? Mary Gates. If I share Gates DNA, and I do, right, then we're really dialed into specifically which marriages, which couples, not just going by surname, but bringing in new surnames. Those are all new discoveries that help us really expand out the whole tree and be more specific. So that if we go back to our very most original problem, which is who's this guy and how does he connect to the Hammonds, we now have a really solid idea, because we've used DNA to triangulate, that most likely he is descended from this couple, Antipas and Beulah. The DNA itself is not proof. And then what we're going to look at is, okay, but Antipas and Beulah are worth looking at. Because maybe I find a will for Benjamin Blodgett where he leaves a bequest to his grandchildren and he names Hammonds. That would be super useful. Maybe, and this is what ended up happening, maybe we find Antipas has various probate and other records that actually name Honeywell as his actual child, which we do. Both his estate records settled out and he left stuff to Honeywell, and the guardianship record, which named Honeywell as his minor child. Woo, right? That was amazing. So, and we knew, we had that other clue. If we go in to the children of, this is the tree that we've been building together now that I've switched over to, is that the other thing that we knew is that Honeywell, the guardianship record had him given to, as his guardian, oh, that's right, we expired, we can't see this, had him given to, as his guardian, someone named Luther Blodgett. And so that also, we've cemented at this point, he was the child of Antipas. Beulah was the spouse of that Antipas, because Antipas's probate record named Beulah as his administrator. And then when guardianship was granted, guardianship went to Luther Blodgett, who does turn out to be a sibling of Beulah's. And that just stitches this whole family much more tightly together, such that when we get back to the tree we've been building together, we can now feel pretty confident that we have the right Beulah, and that is the right set of parents for our Honeywell, as well as his other siblings that are named in those records. We haven't found any other living descendants of these siblings. Yeah. They may not have had any. They may not have left any. They may not have married. They may have died young, right? That is a thing. But we now know that we have, because we then found Beulah in the Blodgett book, and recollection here is that we found her named, hang on, let's just reopen that page. We found her named with a marriage to Centipas Hammond, because they couldn't figure out that name either. But because we have that, we now have her ancestry, and we do actually have her birth record in Whitingham, Vermont, which is where we knew she was, that names her parents as Benjamin and Rebecca Blodgett. But then this book points us to, they weren't originally from Vermont, because Vermont was just being settled at that point. So where did they come from? Well, they came from Lexington and Brimfield in Massachusetts. And now we've bridged another gap, right? Because there's a big records gap in between there. But when we get back to Brimfield, we're going to find a lot more records, because it's New England and they kept really good records. We'll find lots more information that is probably going to give us, this probably came from real records, not family Bibles. We'll be able to build out that whole tree, and then we can figure out, oh, hey, look, we've got Benjamin, we now know, son of Joseph, son of Thomas, son of Samuel, who is descended from the main ancestor, Thomas. So why don't we go back to this is our real tree that we've been building together. We now know this guy is going to be Joseph Blodgett, because the book is telling us so. We're going to assume that the book is probably correct. Joseph is son of, what did I say? Thomas Blodgett. That turned out to have been a good solid family name. We don't know dates for Thomas. And then Thomas, we can add a relative here. He is son of Samuel. And we can go back through the book, obviously, and fill in. It is a safe bet that the book is going to have profiles for all of those people. And then this is going to offer us, I wonder who it thinks he is. That is incorrect. That is not the father of Samuel. Our Samuel is descended from Thomas of Cambridge. Thomas Blodgett of Cambridge. And this one becomes fun, because this Thomas and this Samuel, on a previous stream, we have talked about the New England the Puritan Great Migration of English folks to the New England area. And both of them participated in the Great Migration. They have extensive profiles written about them in New England research that we will be able to draw from. That stuff is well researched and well documented. So it turns into, parts of that book may or may not be correct, but this one turns out to be a family that's really well documented. And in fact, we are able to trace Thomas Blodgett back, I believe, at least one more generation in England, which is a really exciting thing to be able to do. Let me see if I have that. And that turns out to be true for several of the spouses on these lines as well. Yes, in fact, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, yeah, this one is fun. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 additional generations back in England a bit, which is pretty cool. Pretty exciting to be able to do that stuff and to have, like, there's a lot of folks who will say, you'll find in a lot of that New England research that you have your immigrant ancestor who is named this, and then somebody will have done research back in England and they'll say, here is a family with that surname. They are definitely, certainly descended, and without really thinking about how common that surname might be or if there's any evidence for it. So being able to have actual evidence linking you to the English records, that's pretty cool. That gets pretty exciting. The Hammond line claims to do that is wrong. So we don't actually know the English records for our Hammond descent. And I will dedicate a stream to that kind of debunking of the stuff that is wrong. But to take us back to kind of where we started for the stream today, we started with a puzzle, which was, how is our Honeywell, who's down here, how is he, let's see if we open this view, is that going to show us? Yes. Okay, here's our Honeywell. How is he connected to this Benjamin and Elizabeth? We think he is connected, but how? And so we filled in some question marks because we don't know. And we're trying to do the work to come down from the top and also up from the bottom and figure out if there's any place that we can meet. The Hammond book gave us some clues, but it really hasn't locked us in yet. However, as you might imagine, the name Antipas gave us a terrific gift because it's not a common name and it's only used, not only is it only used in one line of Benjamin Hammond's family, but it's also the only family group where the name Honeywell appears. So we now know that actually what we want to do, here's what I'm going to do, is we are pretty sure, I think we can be pretty confident that this is going to be that Antipas, and that now the only thing we're missing, and I'm going to go ahead and merge these two profiles together. Merge duplicate. Yep. Dink. I think. Nope, that's not the one. That is not the one. Select a different person. Nope. Antipas. I want a different Antipas. I want this Antipas right here. So I'm going to merge that guy. So now what we have, if we go back out to the tree, is that we now know, look at that. That is a lot more than we knew before, right? So we now have Antipas had, as far as the records can tell, had 4 sons, and one of them was named Honeywell. So we feel really good about being locked into this family group now. We haven't proved it through records yet. Just to be super clear, we haven't proved it, but all the clues are pointing us in this direction, right? Because we've come up from the bottom and we've said the name Honeywell was already pointing us at the Antipas branch because of all the occurrences of Honeywell in the tree. He's the only common ancestor, right? He's the one they all go back to. All of his ungrateful, worthless siblings did not name any children in tribute to their mother. Shame on them, but good for us, because that made it a lot easier to find things. And it turns out this is useful because this Antipas only has 2 Hammond sons who left any descendants. Only 2. So if we go into this guy now and zero in on his profile, here, do we see any more? Not quite. So it's a little hard to see the edges, but here's the boundaries of this Antipas's family. Right? And then here's my guy. We don't know. So this profile is likely to be a duplicate. This is either Joseph or Benjamin. And we're not sure which one. But now we can look at the book and say, interesting. The book says that this Joseph had a son named Antipas. It doesn't say that Benjamin had a son named Antipas. It doesn't mean he didn't. He might have. Right? He might very well have been a dutiful, grateful son and named his child after his father. Or maybe not. We don't know. And we know that Antipas, this Joseph, is the one that we don't have any dates, right? So we don't know. We don't have any dates for this guy either at the moment. But we have That's an awfully nice clue, but it's not super, like, I wouldn't rule out that he could be a son of Benjamin. And we don't have his birth date, but we do know that this Benjamin had a son, Joseph, who had a son, Honeywell. But we don't now, we're thinking maybe that's, remember, we had that Honeywell who went to Ohio. But that's a Honeywell son of Joseph, and we think Honeywell is son of Antipas. And then we find there's a Guardian record that says, okay, so that's son of Antipas. What we can now do is say, okay, that seems like where we want to look. What if we go find, because the information about the book, in the book about Joseph, was super sketchy. And it said that Joseph went to New York. We know that Antipas is in Vermont, really close to the New York border. So that's kind of okay, right? Because we've got records now saying that where they are in Vermont is Whitingham, which is very close to New York. Okay, why don't we go look for records about Joseph? Well, if you've seen the other stream, you will know that we did that and we found them. We found records for Joseph because, and he was in fact in Whitingham, and what we find is his land records and his estate records that do in fact name his son Antipas, and in fact Antipas was his administrator and everything, like it's all right in there. And we found a baptism record for Antipas listing that his parents were Joseph and Rachel of Rochester, Massachusetts, which matches what's in the Hammond book. So this was how we then dialed it in even further to say he could have been, my Antipas could have been the son of either Benjamin or Joseph, but it turns out we now know it is Joseph. And now we have yet another DNA that we can use to go see if we can back that up. Because we wouldn't expect me to have any DNA cousins related to the Winslow family. But now we can go see, and Benjamin didn't marry a Winslow. He married somebody named Dean, right? No, he didn't marry Dean. He married somebody else. I don't know who Benjamin married. Joseph married Hand and Dean. Benjamin married somebody else who's not a Winslow. So Joseph marries a Winslow. Go in here and add a spouse. He marries Rachel Winslow here. So if we take a look at this big wide tree, we can say finding DNA matches that link us to any of these Hammonds, again, is not telling us anything we didn't kind of already know. But if we find DNA that links us to Blodgett, that's new information, and it points to this couple as the specific part of the tree that we're related to. Same thing with Winslow. If we find Winslow DNA, we expect that that's going to zero us in on that couple or any other Hammonds who married Winslows, which there might be some of. It's useful to look for that. But what we end up with is we end up with pretty good confidence, right? We can actually even take the question marks off of these folks now because we feel pretty confident that we have found the right parents. And what that's going to allow us to do is merge this guy here with, nope, Antipas. This one, I guess that is the right one. Select that guy. Right, and so we're going to keep Joseph Hammond as the father. That's the right guy. We're going to merge those two. You want to do this carefully. You can't undo it once you've done it. Right, and then what we can do is we can go to this question mark right here, and we're going to edit this question mark and make it into a Joseph. The reason I do that first is because if the facts exactly match, then they don't create a bunch of duplicate facts, which is nice. And what I want to do, now that we know that this is Joseph Hammond, father of our Antipas, and it's just taking its time to update the page, is I'm going to select this Joseph Hammond and merge them. Uh-oh, wait, what have I done? Nope, I did it wrong. All right, hang on, we're canceling that. Is that we want this guy, find a Joseph Hammond. I believe we want this one. Is that the right one? Maybe. Yeah, I think that's the right one. Hopefully I didn't mess it all up. Let's go look. So now what we've done is we started out with a line of, yes, we started out with a line of question marks, and we have filled in every one of those question marks. When we started this journey, we were saying there are some number of generations between my Honeywell and Benjamin and Elizabeth. We think he's in that family group. And in various ways, we were able to narrow down, out of all the possible Hammond candidates throughout this journey, we have been able to narrow it down to, yes, in fact, Honeywell is the son of Antipas, who was married to Beulah. Antipas, yes, is the son of Joseph. We thought Joseph looked good. We could have also researched Benjamin. When we researched Joseph, we found the probate records that name that, yes, Antipas of Whitingham, Vermont, is the son of Joseph. And then we knew from the book that this Joseph we already had as the son of this Antipas. This is the family group that uses the name Honeywell. So we know we're now in the right place. And that Antipas is how we are linked to Benjamin and Elizabeth. And then we have one more generation that we get from the book, which is that Benjamin is Benjamin II. He is the son of another Benjamin. That's the original English immigrant that we are all descended from. But that is how we used a combination of DNA to help zero us in on the right people, but also other clues like reuse of uncommon names throughout the tree. In this case, we had the tribute to an ancestress's maiden name that was super useful. You might not always find something as glaring as a really obscure biblical name or a surname used as a given name. You might not find all of that, but when you get into these generations here, the late 1700s, early 1800s, which is where we run into that gap that we have to bridge because the census doesn't help us, in that space happens to be when, among a lot of European populations in North America, it became fashionable for them to have middle names. That isn't the case in my tree, but for the viewer that I've talked about who has a very similar problem, he has a bunch of people who have middle names, and or at least middle initials. And you can also mine those middle names for family names that may have come from a maiden surname or something obscure that gets reused across the generations. And I have a hunch, though we haven't proven it, that his ancestor, who we only know his middle initial, but it's not a common one, that initial might be a middle name that would be his mother's maiden name. Maybe. And because of that, maybe, it's worth it to me, right? It would be worth it to me to look at that couple, because you have a couple with the father's name is the name we would expect. We don't know anything about this mother, but what if her maiden name is this guy's middle name? What if that's their parents? I'm going to dig in because I'm using that to zero in on who out of these 50 possible relatives might have documents that would link us and help us get through this brick wall. Right? So what we're trying to do is we're using DNA matches. So that would be the other thing, right? Do I have DNA matches off of Winslow or Blodgett or off of that person whose middle name might be used? I'm going to look at that family because I wouldn't expect to have matches off of that family unless they married into the family I already know I have. So DNA is going to help me zero in on the right couples if I look at the mother's autosomal DNA. I look for living DNA cousins who are related to mothers of people in my tree, right? My maternal ancestors. That's going to give me new names, new information, because I already know the male line surname. And then I'm going to look for other clues like names, again, to try to narrow down the possible families that I would search. None of that is proof until I find the documents. So what I'm trying to do is make my search for the documents be more efficient. That's what I'm trying to get into. So I've tried a bazillion ways to explain how that works, and I've been at it for an hour and a half. I hope that that all kind of makes sense. And can we do this? Well, it's not a free solution, right? None of the DNA services are free. So we're already talking about something that you'll be paying money for. And which DNA service should you use if you want to do this? Well, to do the specific game of finding cousin matches and matching them to trees, To me, really the only place that does that well is Ancestry. You can do it with GEDmatch. It is a lot more work by hand that you have to do, and you have to understand how to, like, honestly, I don't spend that much time on GEDmatch because I'm confused about what it is trying to tell me. I don't know how to interpret all those results, and I haven't taken the time to get good at it. Wikitree has a feature that will allow you to indicate on your own profile on Wikitree that you have DNA match information on GEDmatch, that your profiles are there, or that you've done DNA on one of the services. And what that can be is an indication as you're looking through other people's trees. You can go look at a family that looks interesting to you and go scroll down, and it'll say, here are living descendants who trace their ancestry to this person. If you are also related to this person, you might share DNA with them. And then you've got to go off of Wikitree to the service in question and go see whether you share that DNA. Chances are you're using GEDmatch for that. So again, it's a little bit more by hand, but it is kind of a little breadcrumb that you can use. And again, if what you're trying to do is just zero in on a particular family group for your research, that may be good enough. It doesn't, I don't know if it works at large volumes or at scale. The challenge on Wikitree is that you won't, in the profiles themselves, you're not linking all these people together in a fishing expedition. You are maintaining that hypothesis for yourself in your own notes outside of Wikitree, and in whatever family tree service that you use privately. Because you're not going to go connect up, hey, let me add Antipas and Beulah as the parents for Honeywell and see what happens, even though I can't prove it. You won't be doing that on Wikitree because you aren't adding parents unless you're reasonably confident that they're correct. Same thing on those family search trees. You're not using those trees to put in fishing expeditions the way that I do on Ancestry. The reason I feel comfortable doing fishing expeditions is because I keep my trees private and I use symbols and other clues to remind myself of things so that I know which people I have that are sort of proven out and which ones I don't. It's actually kind of a nice thing if I've been away from the tree for a while and I come back and I think, where do I want to pick up? There's so many other threads I could research. I will go in and look for people with question marks and say, have we learned anything new? Has Ancestry given me any new hints? Are there any new DNA matches? Because new people are sending their saliva in all the time. Is there anything new about that? Are there any new records? Or do I just want to spend a day digging around on Joseph Hammond of Whitingham to see what I can learn about him? And from time to time, I'll do that. And the goal when I do that is to take somebody who has currently got question marks by them and say, can I find enough information to be able to remove the question marks and say that they are confident, that I'm confident about that tree. So all of that was, I guess, like, I meant for it to be kind of about DNA, but it was really about a wide range of techniques that you can use to focus your research to try to bust through these things that we call brick walls. When we first started on this stream, Honeywell was a brick wall. And I think it's funny that we were able to bust through the Honeywell brick wall here on the stream in the matter of across a couple of weeks, right? Where I could just show you, oh, look, here's a record. And a lot of those things popped up as hints on Ancestry, in part because I've put the information in on Ancestry. I am confident about it, so it is now publicly available. And Ancestry is now able to take my own research and offer it back to me as a hint in a way that we never had before, right? We didn't have when I started. And I've connected with other cousins since then who've also built out their trees more. And so their hints and their information come back to me. We talked about one of my cousins who had she is descended from a sibling of my grandfather Harry. Not a sibling of Eugene, a sibling of Harry, which was pretty cool. So all of that, again, to narrow down research so that when you do the hard part, which is really digging for documents, right? You get past the point where Ancestry offers you kind of the hints for free. When we did the work on Antipas's estate and guardianship records, that work was done on Family Search and digging through probate books in the towns where we start with it. The way I did it, we didn't show this on the stream, but the way I had done it was we had Joseph in Whitingham. And so we had his estate record, And from those estate records, we had land records that showed that, like, his land all went to his children. They turned around and sold the land, and they used the proceeds from selling the land in Whitingham to purchase land in New York, which is where they migrated to. And so you can see that progression of land records, some of which are indexed on Ancestry, but the majority of those land records are actually over on Family Search. I guess the important thing there, we talked last stream about how very difficult it can be to find things on Family Search. Family Search has, as far as I know, way more records than Ancestry, way more details for way more geographic locations. There is a lot more data that is there, and the difficulty that we as users have on Family Search, and everything on Family Search is free. It's all free. But it is very difficult to find a record if you don't already know that it exists and roughly where to look. We had the viewer that I talked about that we did a little bit of poking around on some records of his tree. And one of the first things that I found was that over on Family Search, we couldn't find an estate record or probate for his brick wall ancestor because you could search for it. It wasn't indexed. On a previous stream, I showed you how when we're looking at the films of some of those probate books, oftentimes the probate book has its own handwritten index that says, then here are all the people that are listed in this book, and here's what page they are on. And that's been built out by the people who maintained those books. In his ancestor's case, it was a box of probate packets that didn't have any index to it at all. And it was literally 2 million records, I think it was, that were in that geographic location across all the years, and we didn't know his ancestor's death date. No clue, no idea where to find that, where even to begin. And that ended the journey on free records on Family Search. Done, right? We are stuck. This is why it pains me that I feel like I really wanted on this stream to talk about how we could do this research just as well with maybe a little bit more, a little bit more clunky on Family Search. But we were at an absolute dead end. We would have had to literally sift through hundreds of thousands of films, individual films by hand because they're not indexed. I was curious, so I snuck on over to my paid Ancestry membership. I typed in his ancestor's name and the place that he knew his ancestor lived. Boom, it popped it up. It was the number 10 result in the search, and it was the whole probate packet in that same exact collection that we'd been looking in on Family Search that isn't indexed. Ancestry had it indexed. And so they just said, here it is. What that allowed me to do was I did the lookup. I then found, okay, here's the film number, here's the page number, this is which images they are. Once I know exactly where to look, I can go over on Family Search, and yes, there it all is, the exact same films, because they're using the same source films. Ancestry and Family Search are using the same ones. But when all we had to work with was Family Search, we couldn't find it. Over on Ancestry, I literally found it in 30 seconds. Then I transferred that over and said, here is the link to that information on Family Search, and I sent it to our intrepid viewer. Hi, viewer, thank you for watching. And it was just that easy. So now he's got 80 pages of probate records that sadly do not include a will and don't name any heirs. But it's a start, right? It does have names of creditors and names of neighbors and names of administrators, and it's something, and it zeroes us in on a geographic location, but it's still a wealth of information. There's an inventory. It's cool to see all the stuff people owned, especially when they didn't own other human beings. It's nice to just see that they owned stuff that is supposed to be stuff that's owned, That's nice. So so that was a very satisfying experience, but it does mean, as I'm continuing this journey to try to figure out how can we show and do this research together without paying for a membership at Ancestry, it is harder and harder for me to want to get excited about doing that, because it is tough. It's tough to work on free resources. So if you are doing free research only and you are struggling, yeah, I feel you, right? We're going to continue to dig and try to find more free sources that you all can use. And I hope that you all will continue to share what are your questions? What are you struggling with? Who are your brick wall ancestors? And let's see if we can figure out what are the paths that can get us to some of that information, right? That can help get you on the right path to answering the questions that you have. So with that, I do feel like that's a pretty good place to end it. We're going to end a little bit early today. I want to thank everybody who is watching, and I wanted to wrap up the stream with an acknowledgement. One of my paternal aunts, not the one who's been joining us on the stream, but her sister, passed away yesterday. And she is an aunt that I didn't have a close relationship with, but I do value my relationship with all of her kids. And she created some really amazing human beings. And so my aunt, it's nothing COVID related. She'd been ill for a long time, and I'm sad for my aunt's loss and for their family's loss, and I'm sad for my cousins, and it's just I think in her later days, like she was interested in the genealogy that she got from their mother, who was really into their history of their family. And I think my aunt, who is still living and who joins the stream occasionally, had been sharing some of the details of, like, here's what we found. And so I have no idea whether, a lot of my family members don't find this interesting, and I don't get it, but that's okay. Um, but I did want to give a shout out to all of my aunt's kids. Thinking about you today. You all are amazing, and you've been an important part of my life. And I know it's been a struggle dealing with your mother's illness for all of this time. And I hope that you all are okay, and I am thinking about you. So another great Hammond, who is now someone that I may add to the tree for the stream, because I don't list living people. But unfortunately, I have a new name that I could put in the tree and show you all, because she's no longer with us. But she was great, and she raised she brought us a great family into the world, and so we're thinking about her. And I am thinking about you, Aunt, who frequently joins us on the stream. Thank you for all the work that you've done. Thank you for the work that you did taking care of your sister in her last days. I know that meant a lot to all of us in the family. You are awesome. So with that, everybody be safe and well. And if you're watching on the VOD, thank you. The video on demand, thank you for watching. I will hopefully in the next few weeks have an announcement about all of the videos that we've produced as video on demand. I'm hoping to make those available so that they can be watched at a later time. They stay on Twitch for, I think it is a month after we view, and then they expire. So if you haven't been catching up with the VODs, you may want to do that, but hopefully we'll have other ways for you to watch them in the future. But thank you for joining us. Please remember to send your questions. I think you can use the chat even when I'm not online. And one of our intrepid viewers did find me on Wikitree. By all means, find me on Wikitree and send me your questions. That way, that's a great way to reach me. If you find my profile on Ancestry, you are welcome to send me a message on Ancestry. The point of this stream is that I'm interested in helping you all with your own actual questions. So let me know what those are. And until then, I will see you. As a reminder, we're no longer streaming on Wednesday nights, just on Sundays. So hope to catch you next Sunday. Thanks for joining.